What's happening, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. I figured I'd take the next couple days, today part one, tomorrow part two, to go through some really interesting personnel groupings for the Green Bay Packers, and specifically on offense, and what they could potentially do with new players like Amari Rodgers, maybe a player like A.J. Dillon who's expected to get more playing time, maybe a Jay Sternberger who could potentially take hopefully a step in the right direction. There's Josiah Deguara who could potentially play more, Devin Funchess. There's more weapons potentially at Matt LaFleur's disposal for how he wants to utilize all these different players. And I figured, again, over the course of the next 2 days, I could take a look at 10 total different personnel groupings that I think would be a lot of fun to play with and experiment with, and really use in the regular season, hopefully to Green Bay's advantage. So I'm going to go over 5 of them today. I'll go over 5 more tomorrow on part 2. So if you're not subscribed yet, make sure to do so you're checking out all of these episodes. Again, all of you who are following along, appreciate you greatly, so incredibly much. But let's jump in right away and let's go over my first personnel grouping that I'd like to see Green Bay play with this upcoming season. And that is Aaron Jones at running back, A.J. Dillon at running back, Bobby Tonyan at tight end, Davante Adams at wide receiver, and Allen Lazard at wide receiver. So nothing too insanely exotic here, but we've got the pony personnel, 2 running backs in, and this is really a carryover from what we saw in the Rams game a season ago, and they did it on multiple different games, so it wasn't just that game, but you go back and watch that, and I've talked about this in the past, what Matt LaFleur was able to do to get that Brandon Staley defense out of their 2 safety shell and really make them completely uncomfortable was fun to watch. And basically what they were doing is placing Tonyan or a tight end and a wide receiver. In this case, from this personnel grouping, I'll say Tonyan and Lazard out wide on one side. So like Lazard out wide, Tonyan in the slot. And then Davante Adams on the other side with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the backfield. And what they would do is pre-snap, you got 2 safeties deep, you've got a corner off of, Davante Adams, and you've got 2 players off covering Tonyan and Lazard in this case. And what they would do is they'd motion Aaron Jones from the backfield out into basically a bunch formation with the ability to throw that quick screen to him on the outside with now Robert Tonyan, solid blocker, and Allen Lazard, your best blocking wide receiver, out there blocking for Aaron Jones. And if that third player is late, or if he's not getting over there, if you think you have a numbers advantage, or if you just think that Aaron Jones can make somebody miss and Tonyan and Lazard can execute their blocks, that a lot of times can be an easy 5-6 yard gain for Aaron Jones in that scenario, especially with Aaron Rodgers and his quick release. So they're motioning players over. Sometimes even 3 or 4 guys are shaded to that side. And now what happens is you've got Davante Adams on the opposite side, and a safety has to play over him because you can't guard him one-on-one. So now you got 2 players on that side, 4 on that side. You've got 6 players total. And now you've got 5 guys in the box. You've got 5 offensive linemen, and you've still got A.J. Dillon in the back to hand it off to. And you're looking at A.J. Dillon, the king of 8 and 9 man boxes at Boston College. Them, opposing defenses just continuously stacking players to stop A.J. Dillon. Now going up against a 5-man box. Now, so what's the alternative, right? So again, you hand it off to A.J. Dillon, first of all, in that scenario, if you get 5-man boxes all day long. The alternative is that you keep safeties in. Well, now you've got a 3-on-3 on the outside where a player usually is playing a little bit off, and Aaron Jones a lot of times can get, again, 4, 5, 6 easy yards if Tonyan and Lazard do their jobs as blockers, which they more than often do. And if you don't do that, if you're not keeping 2 players on Davante Adams' side, now again, you've got 4 players on this side. You've got 6 players in the box to help stop A.J. Dillon. You've got Davante Adams one-on-one on the other side, which you're going to take all day long. So this matchup and how Matt LaFleur schemed this presents a ton of issues for opposing defenses. And I'm not sure there's a perfect response to it. So again, you can't leave Adams one-on-one. I think that's fair to say. You have to at least have a safety in the vicinity of that play. Now, maybe you can creep him down a little bit to help and kind of bail off if it's a pass. Maybe you can do some things like that. But man, you get Davante Adams with looks like that, and you're going to take it on the outside. And then again, if you want to play Adams on the outside one-on-one, what are you going to do? Are you going to play off? Aaron Rodgers will throw that smoke screen all day to Adams and he'll pick up 5-6 yards that way. Like, there are a lot of complexities that Matt LaFleur can throw at you just with that one individual look. And I think this is the best grouping of players to pull off that that type of formation and what Matt LaFleur is trying to accomplish. So again, Jones and Dillon in the backfield, Tonyan at tight end, Adams at wide receiver, Lazard at the other wide receiver. And then of course you can just do a variety of normal based offense. And by the way, I wouldn't even put it past going in an I formation with A.J. Dillon being used as a fullback in that scenario. If you're coming out with a smaller box and you have, a 230-pound linebacker that A.J. Dillon needs to take on, I trust A.J. Dillon to get that job done. So, if they come out small to prevent all that stuff I just talked about, and they're in a nickel formation or a dime formation to kind of combat you, heck, go Tonyan at tight end. Even motion Lazard in as almost like an extra H-back or an extra tight end because he's capable of doing it. Add A.J. Dillon as a fullback, Jones as a halfback, Adams out wide. Now you've got basically almost like a two tight end I formation or offset formation, and you can run against a nickel or dime defense. So there are so many options that you can do with that one personnel group, which is why I spent a lot of time talking about it and why it was number one on my list. Number two tight end set, or a tight end and an H-back with Tonyan and Deguara. And then Adams and MVS at wide receiver, and then Amari Rodgers. So you're thinking, all right, I've got two tight ends, three wide receivers. How am I going to defend that as a defense? All right, well, I'm going to play probably a big nickel or maybe a small nickel, maybe a big dime with a couple extra safeties in to watch those tight ends if I want to. But the uniqueness of this formation is Josiah Deguara can be an H-back, a fullback basically. Amari Rodgers, you can put him in back there as a running back. So you're looking at two tight ends, three wide receivers, no running backs. If while you're quickly shuffling through personnel groups, you're like, all right, no running backs in. This is a passing formation. I can go nickel or dime. All of a sudden, you've got Adams and MVS out wide, Tonyan at tight end, Deguara as a fullback, Amari Rodgers as an H-back, or a halfback, or running back, excuse me. So you can do so much with that formation. You can also go Deguara, Tonyan, MVS, Adams out wide with Amari Rodgers in the backfield, just as a single back, running angle routes, doing whatever you want to do, running screen passes to him for, whatever you want to do. So that is a formation that I'm potentially excited about. And again, the versatility of a Josiah Deguara to be a tight end H-back, even lined up wide if you need him to. Now you have an Amari Rodgers who can come in there and basically be a running back, or you can split him out as a wide receiver. So a lot of things that I like. And basically too, we know how much that Aaron Rodgers likes a running back in there to be able to pick up blitzers if need be. Josiah Deguara can basically be used as that big running back that's picking up blitzes if you need to. So you want to put Tonyan at tight end on one side with, MVS out wide with Amari Rodgers in the slot, and then Devontae Adams out wide with then at, Josiah Deguara basically next to him as somebody who can pick up blitzes as basically a big fullback. Remember like the Aaron Ripkowski shotgun days, if you will. Now you've got Josiah Deguara, who also can do some things out of the backfield if you need him to. Again, a variety of things that you can do both running and passing out of this specific personnel grouping. Number 3 on my list is Aaron Jones at running back, Amari Rodgers as basically another running back, basically a 2 running back set, Tonyan at tight end, Adams and MVS out wide. And again, Amari Rodgers and Aaron Jones in the same backfield, I think, can provide a variety of different looks. You can do a lot of the same things I talked about with that Jones-Dillon lineup earlier. You can also just basically run a 3 wide receiver set with Rodgers, Adams and MVS out wide, Rodgers in the slot, Tonyan at tight end, Jones in the backfield. Now run some of the jet sweeps and motions, orbits with Amari Rodgers. Again, you can use them both in the backfield. Also, you can use all 5 of these players out wide. So Aaron Jones can line up as a wide receiver, Amari Rodgers, Bobby Tonyan, Devontae Adams, MVS. You've got a 5 wide receiver set basically with Jones and Tonyan, being a nuanced wide receiver. But overall, you want to split out 5 wides, go for it. You want to run 2 running back set with a tight end, go for it. And again, that just makes things insanely complicated for the defense for how do I want to match up with all this stuff. And then add in Matt LaFleur's complexities of play action and bootlegs and rolling out, and Aaron Rodgers, if he's there, checking and making all the checks at the line that he needs to get players in advantageous positions. I love that personnel grouping and think you can do a lot of spectacular things with it. Number 4 on my list is a real simple 5-wide set. And I know we haven't seen a lot of 5 wides as of late, but give me Davante Adams, MVS, Amari Rodgers, Allen Lazard, and Devin Funchess as just a 5-wide set. I think Aaron Rodgers, based on what looks he gets pre-snap, is going to be able to figure out who has the mismatch. But oh, by the way, now again, you can put Amari Rodgers in the backfield as a hybrid running back wide receiver. He can pick up some blitzes if you need him to. And then also you've got Allen Lazard and Devin Funchess, who are, again, basically like big enough and physical enough to be almost like pseudo H-backs. If you wanted to, you can motion them back and do some fun stuff with them too. So it's a 5 wide receiver set at when you at first glance and when you look at it, but with Amari Rodgers basically being a running back in that formation and Funchess and Lazard being big physical blocking wide receivers, you can run the ball out of that set. And again, when teams are looking at that, they might run like a quarters defense against that with, 7 defensive backs or whatever they want to do to match up against 5 wide receivers. All of a sudden you're running the ball with, Funchess and Lazard leading the way. There's some fun things that you could do with that type of formation. And my last one for today is basically a 3 tight end set. You've got Aaron Jones at running back, Josiah Deguara as an H-back / tight end, Mercedes Lewis and Bobby Tunyon at tight ends, and then Davante Adams at wide receiver. And again, I think this gives you a lot of flexibility. Again, this is a run formation primarily. You're going to put Deguara as basically your lead blocker, Jones in the backfield, Lewis and Tunyon at tight end. Again, you have Davante Adams out wide, which a lot of times you want a safety over the top of that because Davante Adams is that dangerous. Now you're running with 2 good, Tunyon's a serviceable blocker, but Lewis is one of the best in the business and not the best in the business. Solid H-back in Deguara. Run it with Aaron Jones and get the yardage that you can. Again, you can even bring Davante Adams in motion on these plays. You can do some fun stuff with Josiah Deguara. And then this is where all of Matt LaFleur's bootlegs and play actions, and you can do shot plays to Davante Adams out of this. But more often than not, you're probably looking, maybe you're getting Josiah Deguara on a wheel route. Maybe you're getting Aaron Jones on a wheel route. Maybe it's, those quick shallow crossers. Maybe it's, again, the bootleg play action where the tight end or wide receiver comes wide open in the flat. There's so much that Matt LaFleur can do just with any formation, but you put this type of talent around him and he becomes a heck of a dangerous play caller. So those were 5 personnel groupings that I'd like to see Green Bay do some, fun things with this upcoming season. I think the additions of, really more Josiah Deguara, Amari Rodgers having some positional flexibility, Devin Funchess, and then all the guys returning, A.J. Dillon as a power guy and getting more play this year. I think there's a lot of fun stuff that Matt LaFleur is going to be able to do with all these different players and a ton of different fun personnel groupings. I'll be right back here tomorrow with 5 different personnel groupings that I also want to see this upcoming season. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to check out today's audio podcast with Andrew and Kyle. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.